Hello, everyone. I'm Colin Tessier of WrestleZone.com, joined by John Clark tonight to talk about WWE NXT. John, how you doing?
I am doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Obviously, the end of an era tonight. We'll talk all about that. And yeah, if this was the end of the era of the NXT that we have come to know and love, it was a good show. I enjoyed it pretty much top to bottom. We'll talk all about it. Before we do, just want to remind you all that this show, like everything we do here at WrestleZone, is available on any number of streaming platforms: SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, Podcast, whatever it may be. We've got you covered. So I guess to start off with, John, I've got this black and gold mug here. I'm putting on the screen there for a second. Black and gold mug to pour, and it's coffee in the cup, I assure you. And to metaphorically pour one out for the black and gold era of NXT here. John, we're going to have to change everything. We're going to have to get a new overlay. We're going to have to get for an on-screen graphic because there's not going to be any more of this black and gold era starting next week here. So instead, we're going to have to get some rainbow-like effects going here. But, yeah, we still don't know what to expect, but we do know. At first, NXT was coming, but come next week, NXT will be here. The new era of NXT, the new logo. They're going to have a new arena set up. Otherwise, we really don't know what to expect. But again, I guess just to start off with, John, what are your thoughts, I guess, just about bidding adieu to this version of NXT?
Oh man, so I guess it's a little bit bittersweet. I mean, I wasn't a I wasn't a regular watcher of NXT on a weekly basis until it went live on the USA Network. Prior to that, I was exclusively basically reading the spoilers and watching takeovers, and that's about it. So it's probably been just a little over 2 years now that I've watched it on a weekly basis, and it's been all right. I've been told it was a lot better before that, so I can't confirm or deny if it was better when it was 1 hour or two. I tend to not really mind change that much until I am able to see how it affects everybody. So I'm willing to give this a chance next week, see how it works out. And of course, I'm not going to come to judgments after just 1 week. I'll give it a few weeks before I really come to mind. Comments like Herman Takar saying "R.I.P. NXT." Look, I mean, it's a change, of course. I mean, NXT is obviously not going anywhere. Steven Chambers doesn't like the new logo. Some people do, some people don't. It just depends what your taste is. We've seen inklings of what the new arena may look like. I don't think it's going to be all rainbow color like that, but I do think it'll probably be a layout similar to that.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see where it goes. I'm willing to give it a few weeks and see where it goes.
I mean, I agree. I think us as wrestling fans in general, I'll speak for myself. I think if I like something, I don't really want it to change. I mean, change is not inherently good or bad. But based on all the reports that we're seeing, these changes will be drastic. These reports that Vince McMahon himself, along with Bruce Pritchard, will be kind of running the show here. And at first, the reports seemed to be like even more drastic than that. It seemed like they were completely going to be running the show, whereas some updates made it seem like they'll be kind of calling the shots in many ways, but at the same time, it will still be the same kind of brain trust, Triple H, etc., running the show as well. We're not really quite sure how that's going to shake out, but it does appear at least that that it's not going to be too crazy of getting rid of Triple H or anything. So again, if you're going to have that, the guy that's been running the show still very much in charge of it by and large, I feel like it's fair to think that nothing too crazy will change in that sense. And that's what I'm hoping for. That it maintains its kind of general identity, even if the colors and the logo and the general vibe change. This quote unquote revamp. I can hope that they won't get too crazy with it like that. For me, John, you're talking about your kind of history with NXT. I mean, I loved it when they first turned it into what we know it is today, way back in 2014 briefly. Then I followed wrestling for a couple years. When it came back, that was the tail end of 2018, and very early 2019. I love the era of NXT. Aleister Black, Ricochet, the Viking Raiders were there briefly for a time, and Adam Cole, obviously, that's definitely a big part of my NXT fandom. Unfortunately, now in another place, not WWE anymore. So yeah, I guess in that case, in some ways, like it's as good a time as any to make these sweeping changes like that, where it's like if you're kind of losing some of these big stars, you might as well kind of roll with it and do things differently and try and go in a different direction when you've kind of in some ways either been forced to go in a different direction anyway, or if the chips have fallen the way they have, to do that anyway. So yes, I would definitely agree. For me, we're going to have to try our best to press on and hope for the best and try and be open-minded with not assuming the changes will be bad. And again, to not necessarily write it off one way or the other, even after next week. So next, Chris pointing out that Adam Cole leaving was not a surprise. No, it was not. That was definitely one that you could probably have seen coming. But even still, here talking about NXT, and we even 3 months ago, 6 months ago, like it's not like it, was a long coming, like for a time. He was the guy that felt like he wasn't going anywhere, and then the contract news did come out. So yes, in closing, in that sense, we can definitely hope that this new era will be a good one. So regardless, for tonight at least, definitely a lot of good things to enjoy. Again, even if this was the quote unquote the end of an era, we had 2 tag team title matches. I guess we'll start there. One of them was the main event match. We had MSK defending the tag titles against Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan, can never get them straight. And John, you and I talked about this one last week, and I had thought briefly that this would be a good chance to do a title change, because we were talking about last week. Some of the viewers in the comments were saying, MSK is not really working. There's something not quite clicking. So, at least I had shared my thought. If that was the case, if that was kind of the general sentiment in some ways, it might be a good time to give Lorcan and Burch the titles, especially with seemingly this kind of power group of Ridge Holland and Pete Dunn, along with the two of them. Putting titles in a group, pretty good way to make it even more powerful. Instead, MSK won fair and square, and then after the match, Ridge Holland and Pete Dunn turned on Lorcan and Burch, seemingly kicked them out of the group. So I guess I'll ask you, what do you think of this match? And then now I'm even just in the immediate aftermath on Twitter, seeing people wondering, could we see new members to this group, and if so, who might that be?
Oh boy, the match I thought was good at the end there. Not really a surprise by the end result there. I've given my opinion on MSK before. I think they're getting better as far as this, I guess you would call it a breakup, goes. We really don't know about Pete Dunne's future. We just know he was offered a contract extension. We're not exactly sure how long. I still think he had to have re-signed. I think they're doing a lot of stuff with him now. Him and Ridge might be a 2-man unit going forward, although who knows? Of course, it's going to be interesting that the tag division is getting all this attention now, not just in NXT, but also on the main roster. The tag division is getting focused everywhere now. So I'd like to see where it goes. But, you asked me if I thought anybody might be joining them. Do you think anybody's joining them?
Even just a few minutes after the show, before we went live here, I saw some suggestions that somebody like Grizzled Young Veterans could join the group, basically to do a direct substitution of going from one team to another. To me, that'd be something, kind of keeping that thematic aspect of the European power group here, for lack of a better word. I think that'd be definitely an option. Otherwise, depending on travel restrictions and other things, if they wish to bring in somebody else from NXT UK, whoever that might be, I don't know. If we're talking about like fantasy booking stuff, if they want to do like a merger with Imperium, I mean, I don't know. I think there's some fun things they could do. But if they want to maintain this, a separate identity, I think Grizzly Young Veterans would make a lot of sense. And especially now, I think that'd be a good way to kind of loop in Grizzly Young Veterans history with MSK. MSK defeated them in the Dusty Tag Team Classic, so definitely some motive there of wanting to kind of get some revenge on them. So I think I like that option the best. I think that would make some sense. And I feel like they can kind of need to. I mean, Pete Dunne will be challenging for the right to challenge for the NXT title next week in a Fatal 4-Way match. We'll talk about that. But otherwise, Ridge Holland, it feels like they need something. It'd be a little odd to see them just as a 2-man combo, because it's not like an AJ Styles almost situation where they're both good. They can both wrestle. I just feel like they kind of need something a little more than just the two of them. So I like that option. DJ SA pointing out you could bring in heel Ciampa and Thatcher to join them. I'm not quite sure how you get there, because they have been feuding recently. Maybe you turn Thatcher heel. I think that'd be something. Thatcher had been kind of seemingly not destined, but it seemed that they're at one point going to turn him heel and align him with Imperium. So that wouldn't be all that crazy to see him turn heel here. But yeah, I definitely think that we need something. And they clearly kicked out Lorcan and Birch. Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. So I feel like they should do something to kind of to answer that. And I, like I said, I think Grizzly Young Veterans would make sense. And while there are other options, I'd be curious to see where they go with that. But Stephen Chambers not happy that MSK won, saying, darn, MSK won. He's not into them. He's pitching the possibility of seeing Diamond Mine versus MSK at some point. Yeah, that's something we could look forward to. At some point, we could talk about Diamond Mine perhaps adding a team to the tag division here, albeit in the very early stages, the Creed brothers here. That could be something kind of down the road there. And Neshkurst, John, you and I talked about this before. She's saying that they gave MSK the belts too fast. I mean, that's what we were talking about last week, where it's like MSK is great, they're very talented, but maybe some of the reasons, or at least one of the reasons that maybe they've rubbed people the wrong way with the booking is that they won the titles so quickly. So definitely something to consider there, where they won the titles tonight. They look good in doing so. And by virtue of beating this team, I feel like, they're probably safe to have titles for a little while. But otherwise, yeah, I feel like maybe still the Dunn and Holland group remains probably the top threat to MSK, again, whether it's adding another team to challenge for it. So otherwise here, we did have another tag title match on the women's side of things. We had Io Shirai and Zoe Stark facing Casey Catanzaro and Kaden Carter. And this was, I at least thought a little bit, another match where a title change was possible, right? You've got a pretty classic story of, Io and Zoe don't get along despite their attempted bonding at the sushi restaurant from a couple weeks back. Whereas Casey and Caden, a very cohesive team, a very, they're on the same page. That story, that was a story of this match where Io and Zoe were not on the same page. They literally butted heads at one point. They're arguing. Io wouldn't tag Zoe and all that kind of stuff. Again, pretty boilerplate kind of thing there. Whereas Casey and Caden, no problems whatsoever. They were on the same page. So, for me, as the match went on, I really thought we were going to get new champions. And instead, Io and Zoe retain the titles here, and Stephen Chambers saying it was a great match. I would agree. Definitely good to see the women's tag titles getting a spot like this. But yeah, kind of like MSK. It's like, okay, they didn't do the title change here. Although it's worth noting that JC Jane, Mandy Rose, and Gigi Dolan did attack them after the match. So that is something. At least unlike the men's tag titles, that's the clear next direction here. Do you think that I would think Gigi and JC would be the team to face them? Do you think we might see them get the title at some point, or if not, who?
It's a hybrid situation. There's so many possibilities, and they don't really delve too deep into this as far as where they're going in the future. They just kind of focus on the immediate present when they do the women's tag division. Your guess is as good as mine. I have no idea where we could see this women's tag division go. There is way too many possibilities, and it's way too unpredictable right now.
I would agree. To me, I've been talking about it pretty much since Mandy Rose showed up on NXT. I feel like, putting her with Gigi and JC, especially, that's a very clear alliance now. That automatically kind of think, maybe not next week or the one after that, but maybe at some point not too far down the line, we could see them win the titles, especially with this storyline of Io and Zoe not getting along. So I could definitely see that. Stephen Chambers pointing out that Mandy borrowed Sheamus's face mask. We did see Mandy kind of, at least in the storyline, hurt her face last week. So it was nice to see a little connective tissue like that they, threaded it together like that week to week. That's something I always like to see, where, again, very, very simple thing of just acknowledging things they do week to week. That these things happen, that you're not just pretending that these shows happen in vacuums, that it's an ongoing storyline. NXT is usually pretty good about that. The main roster, not always the case, but we're talking about this show specifically, though. I do like this comment from French Nando, wondering about these supposed changes to NXT, the new era, the new management. Now we've seen some of the older I don't see. I guess the older wrestlers kind of get released here and there in NXT as part of these mass cuts. And Nando's wondering if we see Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly being in Vince McMahon's vision of the new NXT. I mean, Kyle O'Reilly seems fine. He next week will be the supposed start of this new era. He'll be in that fatal four-way match that we will talk about in a minute. And Roderick Strong, still in Diamond Mine, he's still doing pretty well. And some reports that came out after the initial, everyone freaked out that Vince McMahon supposedly was in charge of NXT. The updates were saying no, he's like been somewhat in charge, like he's been involved with it for a while, and that might just be kind of increasing. So it's not like we're going from, oh, Triple H was pushing these guys and then Vince is going to step in and do things entirely differently. Like, no, Vince McMahon has been involved. So I'd be surprised if we saw anything contrary to what Nando's saying, that if they weren't quote unquote part of his vision. I think they're fine. I think they're going to be featured in this new era for NXT at least early on. You can never know what's going to happen, but yeah, I think they're just fine. I think that they're going to be front and center, at least for now. Would you agree?
I absolutely think both of them will be front and center. The Roderick Strong and Diamond Mine seem fine. They just added new members. I don't see anything going on there. And then Kyle O'Reilly, we might as well talk about this fatal four-way match next week that Kyle O'Reilly is in with LA Knight, Tommaso Ciampa, and who's the last one? Is it
LA Knight, Ciampa, Dunn, right?
Pete Dunn? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's an intriguing match. Kyle O'Reilly obviously is a part of the plans, being that he's in this match. A reference there to losing his friends in the past couple months. Maybe what quite possibly is going to be the last ever reference to Adam Cole on that show was Kyle O'Reilly saying that he lost his friends this summer. I don't think he's going to win next week. I kind of think Pete Dunne's going to win and set up this match. What do you think?
Assuming that Pete Dunne's sticking around, and as we talked about earlier, that feels like it's the case. He's still very much been involved on a weekly basis in a prominent spot on NXT. That makes sense. They had even teased that as far back as Joe being in the enforcer role, where they had a couple of confrontations with Dunn. So that feels like a pretty natural step to go starting next week. O'Reilly would make sense as well. I think that'd be a very good match. And there's definitely a story to tell there as he maybe not continually like hammering on the fact that he quote unquote lost his friends, but just being the last sole member of the Undisputed Era, the last kind of, hanger on of, not part of the pun, but of that era of NXT. There's definitely a story there. LA Knight, I like him a lot. I say every time we talk about him, I like him a lot, big fan of him. But I don't see him winning next week. That definitely would be a little jarring. He lost him under our title, and that'd be kind of like falling upward. I think if they want to build him up into a title contender, they could easily do that. But I feel like next week probably not the time to do it so rapidly. So it's Dunn, Knight, and Ciampa. Ciampa is definitely a good option as well. I think that pretty much exactly what I just said about Kyle O'Reilly. Very much the same thing. Kind of the old guard of NXT against a different old guard of NXT and Samoa Joe. But I think you could do that. They briefly teased that a week or two ago when Joe and Ciampa stood tall. I think they were being attacked by Dunn and their group there. They could easily do that. That'd be a fun match. Ciampa, having his own redemption story, trying to get his title back. He used to call it Goldie when he was feuding with Adam Cole. So, having him kind of go back to that side of things of chasing the title there. Definitely, I think all of them are good options. And as I said, as much as I like LA Knight, probably not the time for it. But I think Dunn and Ciampa would be my top two choices. Dunn would probably slightly take the edge there, and I think we're in agreement on that might be the best option. Again, assuming Dunn's sticking around, and I feel like that's the case. We haven't really heard anything about it other than I think he was offered a contract extension. We don't know the details about that. So I'm going to predict a win for Dunn there, but Neshker is saying that she thinks or wants Ciampa to win and setting that up as well. I think we're probably going to get both matches, assuming that Joe gets a fairly lengthy run here. So if they want to do Dunn, if there is a fall, assuming there's a fall takeover, maybe doing Dunn there, maybe building up Ciampa longer term, or building up Kyle O'Reilly even longer beyond that. I just don't know. I think there's a lot they could do there. So we will find out who'll be challenging for the men's title next week, but there will be a title match next week on the women's side of things. So we do know that Raquel Gonzalez will defend the title against Frankie Monet. This felt a little abrupt. We had a backstage segment where Robert Stone said, "Hey, Frankie, I got you the title match next week," and that was it. It was like, all right, we didn't really get any build to this match other than Frankie kind of establishing herself on NXT as a member of the Robert Stone brand and then the Frankie Monet brand. But it's not like they've been feuding. It's not like I don't think they've really interacted all that much. For that reason, I feel pretty darn safe in saying that Raquel will win the title. Raquel will retain the title next week because, we've talked about it for quite a while now. She's had such a dominant reign. Whoever does beat her, I feel like it's going to be part of a fairly, heated storyline that you'd be able to kind of not predict it, but it's not going to be kind of a throwaway match like this, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think 100%. But the interesting part to me is like thinking a little bit ahead. Where could this go after this is a question that I have. Like, where do you think this is? Like, is this leading to something?
I don't know. Like, it's weird. That's why I was kind of thrown off that they did this in the first place. This feels kind of like a one-off. Nando saying Monet should be on the main roster. I would agree. And this is one of the things I'm not quite sure how you get there. I said it when she first arrived. I think they could easily kind of just pretty quickly move her up, but that's the fact she's been part of the Robert Stone brand. And granted, we literally have seen people get released that are part of storyline, so crazy things would happen than to see Monet just get called up kind of out of the blue. Having this title match, maybe then she decides to move up or gets called. I don't know. Maybe she loses and that sets up the official implosion of the Robert Stone brand, because we did see tonight that she and Robert Stone are still on the same page. They're a united front like that. So for this specific match, I would agree that I don't really see it going anywhere. And just like Nando's saying that Monet should be on the main roster, Neshika is saying that Frankie could have skipped NXT entirely, and I would agree. But she's done a couple of interviews where she wanted to kind of quote unquote learn the WWE style, and how you do that, you work in NXT. So maybe it's already September, so I feel like it's been, I guess, about 5 months now. So it might be time. But for Raquel, definitely we saw a match that would seemingly suggest her maybe slightly longer term play here of feuding with Kaylee Ray. Steven Chambers saying that might be what we see beyond this, where we saw Kaylee Ray pick up a pretty good win over Ember Moon tonight in the opening match. This match got time. It was good. Ember Moon, former women's champion in NXT. This was Kaylee Ray's first match since he arrived on the primary brand for NXT. So it was good to have her get a lengthy match like this. And, they are very clearly setting this up where Kaylee Ray confronted Raquel after her match at TakeOver, which was about the other 2 weeks ago or so.
Yeah.
So it feels like that's where they're going. If they want to draw it out to another TakeOver and have Kaylee Ray win the title there, I could see that happening. Neshika predicting even in a general sense of seeing Raquel lose the title at a TakeOver. That could be in October, or maybe, I guess, if not November. We haven't really gotten any announcements about when the next TakeOver will be, but that's based on what we saw last year. Yeah, right. But predicting based on what we've seen in the past, last year there was one in October, so that might be the case. We just don't really know. But whenever that takeover does happen, I would assume we might see that, because that would be a takeover level match. Kaylee Ray, the longest reigning women's champion in NXT UK history, Raquel being this very dominant NXT women's champion on the primary brand, pretty much writes itself. So odd to kind of have this randomly thrown together match here for next week, but beyond that, I think again, not quite sure what's next for Frankie, but I think for Raquel, this is a pretty safe bet. And with that, John, it is at least my favorite part of the show, and I was very much looking forward to this week. I got asked a minute ago what I thought about the Bachelor and Bachelorette parties, and I'm going to break this down because it was beautiful. It was cinematic. I saw someone tweet that if the Bachelor, I think it was the guy specifically mentioned the Bachelor party, where he said if it was like a full-length Netflix movie, he'd watch it. I'm like, heck yeah, man, I would too. Stephen Chambers saying it was funny. In some ways, it reminded me of the Hangover franchise, where there was laser tag, there was go karting, there was axe throwing. I don't understand why that's a thing, but people do it. And there's a bunch of things, and there's just so much really good stuff here. I guess with, based on how I set that up, we'll go with talking about the men's bachelor party first, where you had Cameron Grimes paying for Dexter Lumis's bachelor party and the wedding. So that is both tying in Cameron Grimes's new, $1 million man-esque character. And he said that he would pay for this to kind of, and he called it a truce with Dexter Lumis. Now, if you remember last fall, basically a year ago now, he had a pretty lengthy feud with Dexter Lumis. They had like a House of Horrors match or something, kind of a cinematic deal there for Halloween Havoc. And that feud stretched on for a couple months. And, that they tied that back tonight, where he said, hey, this is a truce, let's bury the hatchet here. And this was beautiful. We had Dexter teaching Johnny Gargano how to throw the axe. We got a beautiful friendship montage where they were playing skee ball, and they kind of high-fived. Aussie Jones pushed Johnny into the high five, and then ultimately it ended with Johnny saying, let's go have a wedding. So at least for one night, the way is on the same page. They're happy. For me, it makes me hope that we might actually get the wedding next week. But before we get there, we also got the bachelorette party. Of note, Persia, Steph DeLander, debuted as Indy Hartwell's best friend. We got a funny line from Candice LeRae saying that that Indy doesn't have friends, but she got them all together here. But we got, again, just as we saw this character development with Johnny Gargano, seemingly being on board with the wedding here after bonding with Dexter again. Candice had said, I wasn't on board with this at first, but clearly Dexter actually loves you, so go nuts, kids. And then there was one line that I laughed way too hard at, where I think Candice had said that John is going to be a tough nut to crack, and Indy had said, "Oh, then Dexter's just going to have to crack his nut." My gosh, I laughed so much at that. Like sometimes they throw things in there, and like, yes, okay, I have the humor of a 5-year-old sometimes, but that cracked me up so much. I literally will laugh out loud. This was fun stuff, man. Like this is what I like. Obviously, it's a wrestling show. Okay, we're here for the matches and the storylines and the wrestling, if you will. But stuff like this, it's fun, it's harmless, and the fact, like the storytelling we saw tonight, to me. This is like what I want from NXT. Like as I said, you had Grimes and Lumis, burying the hatchet. You had this character development for Gargano and Lumis, and on the flip side, Candice and Indy. Good stuff. This was fun, and it was a good way to have Odyssey Jones in there. You had Cameron Grimes in there. You had Drake Maverick, who popped up on Raw last night, so I'm not quite sure what's going on there. I like this, and it reminded me of the the peak pandemic era cinematic side of things. So it was interesting that we got this tonight. In theory, in a quote unquote normal episode of NXT, but. Yeah, they both want. They got time. Like it was a solid portion of the show in both cases. I like this a lot, John. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts, and if what we saw tonight perhaps either sways your thought about how the wedding might turn out next week, or on the flip side confirms your previous predictions.
Well, I'm curious to see if this main events or closes the show next week, or the Fatal 4-Way. It'll be interesting, nevertheless. Oh boy, there's a lot to get into about this, as far as if it's actually going to happen, if it's actually going to be completed, if there's going to be shenanigans, which there probably will be. There was a comment above by Michael Covington that I thought was pretty good. And he said that Austin Theory is going to show up and declare his love for Indy Hartwell. That would be a swerve and very funny, I think. I don't really know what else would be happening here besides somebody's turning on somebody, which is what always happens. But who that is, I mean, I don't even know who to predict. What about you?
I think, Austin makes the most sense as someone that's been in the way. He's been absent for a while. He was doing some dark matches, so there was some thought that he was getting called up, but no developments on that front. other than a complete curveball that I can't even predict right now, like I think that's the only thing I could really think of. Again, I really hope that like we actually get to see this. The wedding goes through and we get a happy ending. Because for me, sometimes the best thing is to flip the script. Like everybody's kind of predicting something's going to happen. Nevsky is saying something is going to happen, and someone had during the segment had a line in it. It was like, oh, it's a WWE wedding. It'll never happen. Something was going to go wrong. DJ Tessier pointing out they could do a Triple H and have Gargano take into to the Vegas drive-through. We saw that with Triple H and Stephanie way back in the day. I'm not sure if they'd go that far, but there is definitely, if not only room for shenanigans, probably I would say probability for shenanigans. And sitting here today, I'm just bummed. It's like I want to see this happen. Like, and I'm going to be disappointed if they don't go through with it, because I think it'd be really fun to see, again, them actually go through with the wedding and flip the script and do something different there. DJ Tessier pointed out that was Corey Jade with a comment about the weddings there. Thank you very much. Yeah, and again, one of the better things about both these segments was that they gave again some spotlight for an Odyssey Jones, a Cora Jade, people that probably wouldn't be on the show tonight otherwise. Even just
Absolutely.
This one little, I can't say little, pretty lengthy segment. Ozzy Jones was bouncing on trampoline and he was in there playing laser tag. And my gosh, John, this laser tag thing was bonkers. You had Dexter choking people out. You had Dexter chloroform a dude in a laser tag. My gosh, this is just plain old fun stuff. I like it a lot. And just for one night, all right, I'm gonna just sit here and say I enjoyed this. I don't want to bum myself out with the likelihood that we're not going to actually get the wedding, the happy ending that I want next week. But at least for tonight, I thought it was a very, very fun two-part segment here where you had both parties doing different things but telling the same story of the way coming together, uniting, and very likely Austin Theory or somebody ruining that next week. But in a vacuum, I thought this was very, very well done. I liked it a lot. And I'm very much both looking forward to and anxious about what's going to happen next week. Because again, I want it so badly and I feel like I'm not going to get it. But on the flip side, definitely this segment raises questions otherwise. I mentioned a minute ago, we had Drake Maverick pop up on Raw last night to kind of re-enter the 24/7 title scene. The greatest 24/7 champion of all time, trying to consummate his marriage there. And now the kind of fittingly here, he's involved the wedding here, or at least the bachelor party here. I don't know. It's not like they made an announcement like Drake Maverick has officially moved to Raw. I haven't even seen reports about that. So I'm not sure if that was like a cameo. Again, it feels like sometimes with NXT main roster, the left hand doesn't talk to the right. So I'm not really quite sure. I will say Maverick had tweeted, I think it was like on Saturday, a picture of this group of Loomis and Odyssey and Gargano. So this is clearly taped ahead of time. So maybe this was it, that this is just kind of a one-off, or I should say his exit from NXT, and it's not like he got written off. It was just like he was there for the party, and then he'll be moving on to, if not greener pastures, at least other pastures with Monday Night Raw. I would think that's the case, that this was taped ahead of time, and then they wanted him live on Raw, and there you have it. We'll probably be able to see whatever happens next week, whether he's on NXT, Raw, both. They could do the Karrion Kross method, have him on both. I don't know. I think I'd be happy to see him on Raw. I think they could do things with NXT. So we're gonna have to wait and see. Now, Chris pointing out that the greatest champion of all time for the 24/7 scene is R-Truth, and yes, you're absolutely right. I was mostly just joking about the comedic gold of Maverick and the all the crazy things he did, trying to again consummate the marriage there. So we have Maverick, ironically, is one of the, I guess, the old guard of NXT at this point, being a guy that's been there for a while. But we had several newcomers tonight. You had Mei Ying make her in-ring debut. Very pretty decisive squash match. So at least Tian Shaw back in the winning ways here. Not quite sure where you're going to go with that, but I think you could build it up where somewhere down the road you could have Mei Ying challenge for the title. Maybe that's where they're going with it. But at least for tonight, not much to really like break down. She looked dominant. She's got a good presence. It's a good good act. I like it. And we'll have to figure out, or I should say, wait and see where they go with it. Otherwise, the Creed brothers, the Diamond Mine recruits, they look great. Like this was their first in-ring match tonight, and my gosh, like these guys look good. They were dominant. Like they were like suplexing. I think they're just kind of an enhancement talent. And I think in the end, one of the Creed brothers like suplexed the dude and just like blasted him with a forearm, like stiff stuff. Like I was impressed. Like usually you've got newcomers and they kind of take a while to find the footing. These guys like just hit the ground running. I was thoroughly impressed. I liked it a lot. And I mentioned earlier in the show, but like I could see, again, maybe as a more of a long-term thing, if they like build it up, they could have these guys challenge at MSK at some point. What do you think about this, John?
Man, that's an interesting approach. Being that they're still obviously fairly new, they did look good in their debut. This is kind of what makes me think maybe the future is brighter than what we think it is.
Yeah, there's a lot to be hopeful about. You've got the Creed brothers, who this was their first match, so they're very much the new and the part of this new era for NXT. And ironically, guys like this might be kind of the perfect example of this new era of guys that I think they're very much have a background with amateur wrestling, that they're not independent wrestlers or independent standouts, but they're guys that the WWE wants to kind of mold in their style and kind of craft the raw talent there into their into what they want from out of wrestler, almost like a creative wrestler in that sense. So to me, yeah, I think that's a very good point that they are one of many people to be kind of hopeful about as we prepare for this new era. Did you guys say comparing the Creed brothers to AEW's Bear Country? Yeah, two big, kind of beefy dudes. They look pretty darn impressive. So I think they look great tonight. You got Mei Ying looking good. Stephen Chambers saying that maybe when Xia Li comes back, if she comes back, that she and Mei Ying could team up and go for the women's tag titles. I think that would be pretty darn cool to keep Tian Shaw as a dominant force. So two other people to feel very hopeful about for NXT moving forward. Santos Escobar and Carmelo Hayes had a very good match tonight. I liked it a lot. Carmelo Hayes was the breakout tournament winner. This guy, I'll say both guys, Escobar and Hayes, if WWE plays the cards right, these guys are very much stars in the making, or even stars right now. They've got a great look, a natural charisma, just genuine star power. And I kind of half jokingly tweeted, like, part of me was like, man, Santos Escobar, it'd be cool to see him thrive on the main roster. And then I was like, oh, it'd be cool to see him go to AEW and feud with Andrade. And ironically, Escobar hit the Andrade like running knees in the corner. So that was after I tweeted that. So I was like, oh, it's almost like they're foreshadowing. But I think, for me, he could be everything that Andrade. Not that Andrade wasn't, but what Andrade could have been. If Andrade had stayed in WWE, that he could be this feel like Hispanic or whatever you want to say, star in that element where you've got right now you've got Lucha House Party and the Mexican culture not really being very well represented, whereas Escobar, to me, like he could really be a great star on the main roster. Potentially a future NXT champion, maybe in the slightly shorter term lens there. But I think he's great. I think he's got a great look. He impresses me every time he's in the ring. Carmelo Hayes as well. I think he's very, very impressive. And this felt like maybe not that we're not getting a feud here, but we saw Elektra Lopez slam Hayes at ringside. Then later in the night, we got a promo from Hit Row, who has felt like kind of they've like stepped into the background a little bit. We haven't seen as much of them lately, but they had a promo, and they pretty clearly suggested that their feud with Legado del Fantasma is not over, and they kind of set up a match with Elektra Lopez and B-Fab, the Jade Cargill like figure in Hit Row. Where, and to me, that feels like a pretty natural direction where you've got Elektra Lopez slamming Carmelo Hayes. B-Fab I think she's gotten physical during a couple of these brawl segments with Hit Row. So I feel like that would definitely be a pretty logical direction to go with and to go, kind of as a continuation of this feud here. But definitely feels like they've got some unfinished business here. Would you agree?
I absolutely agree, and I agree with your point that is obviously right, that they haven't been featured as much as in recent weeks. It's interesting to me why that is. I'm not sure if this has anything to do with the changes they're making, because they very much give me the vibe of like an old NXT, not this newer version that we're going to be seeing. But who knows? It's hard to say. all I know is they're going to be heavily featured because for some reason they're very well liked.
Yeah, and that's something we've talked about quite a lot here, where we don't quite get the appeal, but definitely they've got plenty of support. People cheer for him. People like him a lot. Yeah, I mean, I think that I should say, Nesh Chris pointed out they weren't even on the show last week, so we had at least the promo tonight. I would probably imagine that they'll be on the show next week. I mean, it's ironic where like they even just based on the persona that they have of the like swag and like hit row and they're like they always have these very like I don't know, they've got that vibe about them, and then this new logo for NXT that's very like hip hop. It feels like there's a very natural partnership there where it's like they kind of feel like almost made for each other, whereas like NXT has been, to me, we've talked about it in recent weeks, this like not heavy metal, but like rock, and like it's the black and gold brand that they literally had a skull in the logo, whereas now it's much more like new agey, like the rainbow logo, more again hip hop esque. So I feel like Hit Row, we're talking about the Creed brothers being maybe an example of the recruits of this like development pattern that we're hearing about. To me, Hit Row could be kind of in some ways like the face of this revamp, where I just see this kind of parallel or just definite comparison there that kind of makes itself. So I'd be definitely not surprised at all to see some again, if not overlap, just definitely like this connection. Isaiah Walker saying the new listen to hip hop. I don't know. I get the vibe. They play the little like the theme music during the little vignettes, and it feels kind of like I don't know. Am I wrong, John? It feels like there's something there.
I mean, yeah, I guess, but I don't know. It's hard to say, really, but I don't know.
Hard to say, but regardless, Hit Row, I think they got potential. I think guys like Santos Escobar, I think there's, as you said, Domenico, John, there's so much to really look forward to in NXT, even with all these changes. Friend of the show, Nando, pointing out that Odyssey Jones, Isaiah Swerve Scott, a lot of guys, and women on NXT right now there's a lot to be excited about. There are a lot of people with potential. And on top of that, next week, it will be the start of this new era. Steven Chambers asking if it's going to be live. I think it will be live. Like
yes, it is. Yeah.
They had taped a couple shows to kind of end the current era, and then they're going live next week with this somewhat redesigned new arena with the new logo, with the new setup here. So it will be live, and as we've been talking about, they're definitely setting up to be a special show with the wedding. I think that will go on last, if maybe if not that definitely the Fatal 4-Way, but you've got that, the women's title match, definitely lots to look forward to there next week and beyond. So very much, again, looking forward to next week, and also some level of anxiety about the wedding, about the revamp, about what's next for NXT as a whole here. So again, regardless of all that stuff, at least sitting here tonight, I thought it was a very good show. I thought if this is it for NXT as we know it, this was a good send-off with the very, very fun Bachelor and Bachelorette parties, with 2 good tag title matches, with Escobar and Kamala Hayes having a very good match. So with all these things in mind, I would probably go I'd give like a 7.9. Like, I thought it was really good. And a lot of that is probably propped up by the Bachelorette party, Bachelor and Bachelorette party, as I like that a lot. The tag title matches were good. Escobar and Hayes was good. Lots of stuff to enjoy for me. John, what do you think?
I would give it a flat 7, average 7 out of 10. Just a nice, typical show. Nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing extraordinarily different than that we might be seeing next week. So, I mean, next week's going to be the big test, I think, to see what they can come up with.
Absolutely. It's definitely going to be a big test kind of maybe like almost a barometer of this new era of NXT here. So kind of with that in mind, again, just for tonight at least, Neshkurs agreeing with your 7, friends from Nando giving it a 7.5 dog, RIP old NXT, and Steven Chambers also giving it a 7.5 dog as well. Getting a couple 7s here though, so it feels like we're at least in the general sense in fairly consistent agreement, where Hermitar giving it a 7 with the recipes for NXT, and Jeff Hardy, who has joined the 24/7 title scene on Raw, which is a damn shame. And Michael Kent giving it a 7 as well, and Laura Rock is 7.3. So yes, definitely feels like a fairly average consensus. Again, my number was very much propped up by the fact that I just love the Bachelor and Bachelorette party. So I'll admit I was definitely biased like that. So again, if this is it for the next year as we know it, it's a damn good send off. I liked it a lot. And Teacher Cassidy is saying if it wasn't for the parties and Mae Yang, it would be a 4.5. So saying kind of beyond those two things, probably up not a very good show, but I enjoyed it. I think that this was probably NXT at its best for right now. I guess just about its best. I think for me to be at its absolute best, you'd have like a Ciampa match or a Samoa Joe match. Like that'd be like absolute peak. But otherwise, it was a very good show. And again, the message of tonight is excitement and some anxiety about next week because we just don't know what to expect and we're gonna have to wait and see. But don't you worry, John. You and I will be back here next week to talk all about it. In the meantime, just before that, John will be back with us next week for the Monday Night Raw post show on Mondays, and we'll also have Robert DeFelice and I on Saturday morning to talk about Friday Night SmackDown. The Dynamite Dudes of Rampage cover all things AEW. They'll be going live later this week to talk about All Out, all things AEW. Definitely lots of fun stuff on that side of things. Otherwise, a great stream of interviews constantly coming to you guys. I've got a couple ones lined up myself that I'm very excited about. Otherwise, Bill Pritchard recently interviewed CM Punk, Paul White, many other very, very exciting names. So make sure to leave a like and subscribe and just follow our audio platforms, whether it's SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, whatever it may be. We've got you covered. So, John, with that being said, with NXT being fun tonight, with we had Raw last night, we've got SmackDown and just whatever company you like. There's always an abundance of wrestling to enjoy. And for me, the show like tonight was fun, and it made it easy to do the one thing we do here at WrestleZone. Can you tell me what that is?
Enjoy the show. Enjoy the wrestling.
Indeed. Thank